Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 2, Chapter 9. Anna entered with bent head, playing with the tassels of the bashlyk. Her face was radiant, but not with joy. It was rather the terrible glow of a conflagration on a cloudy sky. When she saw her husband, she raised her head and smiled, as though she had awakened from a dream. "You're not abed yet? What a miracle," she said, taking off her bashlyk, and without pausing she went into her dressing-room, crying, "It is late, Alexey Alexandrovitch," as she got to the door. "Anna, I must have a talk with you." "With me?" she said in astonishment, coming out into the hall and looking at him. "What is it? What about?" she demanded as she sat down. "No, let us talk then, since it's so necessary, but I would much rather go to sleep." Anna said what came to her mind, astonished at her own facility at telling a lie. Her words sounded perfectly natural. She seemed really to want to go to sleep. She felt sustained, lifted up by some invisible power, and clad in an impenetrable armor of falsehood. "Anna, I must put you on guard." "On my guard? Why?" She looked at him so gaily, so innocently, that for anyone who did not know her as her husband did, the tone of her voice would have sounded perfectly natural. But for him, who knew that he could not deviate from the least of his habits without her asking the reason, who knew that her first impulse was always to tell him of her pleasures and her sorrows, and the fact that Anna took special pains not to observe his agitation or even to speak was very significant to him. He felt by the very tone that she assumed that she said openly and without dissimulation, "Da, thus it must be, and from henceforth." He felt like a man who should come home and find his house barricaded against him. "Perhaps the key will yet be found," thought Alexey Alexandrovitch. "I want to put you on your guard," said he in a calm voice, "against the interpretation which might be put by society on your imprudence and your rashness, your rather too lively conversation this evening with Count Vronsky." He pronounced this name slowly and distinctly, attracted attention. As he spoke, he looked at Anna's laughing eyes, for him so impenetrable, and saw, with a feeling of terror, all the idleness and useless of his words. "You're always like this," she said, as though she had comprehended absolutely nothing, and attached no importance except to a part of his speech. "Sometimes you don't like it because I'm bored, and sometimes because I have a good time. I was not bored this evening. Has that disturbed you?" Alexey Alexandrovitch trembled. Again he twisted his fingers till his knuckles cracked. "Oh, I beg of you, keep your hands still. I detest that," said she. "Anna, is this you?" said Alexey Alexandrovitch, trying to control himself and stop the movement of his hands. "Da, but what is it?" she asked with a sincere and almost comic astonishment. "What do you want of me?" Alexey Alexandrovitch was silent and passed his hand across his brow and over his eyes. He felt that instead of having warned his wife of her errors in the sight of the world, he was agitated at what concerned her conscience and was perhaps striking some imaginary obstacle. "This is what I wanted to say," he continued in a cool and tranquil tone, "and I beg you to listen to me until I have done. As you know, I look upon jealousy as a humiliating and wounding sentiment which I would never allow myself to be led away by. But there are certain social barriers which one cannot cross with impunity. This evening, judging by the impression which you made, I am not the only one. Everybody noticed it. You did not conduct yourself at all in a proper manner." "Decidedly, I did not please anybody," said Anna, shrugging her shoulders. "He does not really care," she thought. "All he fears is the opinion of the world. You're not well, Alexey Alexandrovitch," she added, rising and turning to go to her room. but he stepped up to her and held her back. Never had Anna seen his face so displeased and angry. She remained on her feet, tipping her head to one side, while with quick fingers she began to pull out the hairpins. I hear you," she said in a calm tone of banter. "I shall never listen with interest, because I should like to know what it's all about." She herself was astonished at the assurance and calm naturalness which she put on, as well as her choice of words. "I have no right to examine your feelings. I think it is useless and even dangerous," Alexey Alexandrovitch began. "If we probe too deeply into our hearts, we run the risk of touching on what we ought not to perceive. Your feelings concern your conscience, but in presence of yourself, of me, and of God, I am in duty bound to remind you of your obligations. Our lives are united, not by men, but by God. Only by crime can this bond be broken, and such a crime brings its own punishment. I don't understand at all. Ach, Bozhe moi, how sleepy I am," and said Anna, still undoing her hair and taking out the last pin. "Anna, in the name of heaven, don't speak so," said he gently. "Maybe I'm mistaken, but believe me, what I say to you is as much for your advantage as for mine. I am your husband, and I love you." A slight frown passed over Anna's face, and the mocking fire disappeared from her eyes, but the word love irritated her. "Love," she thought. "Does he even know what it means? Is it possible that he loves me? If he had never heard of love, he would always have been ignorant that there was such a word." "Alexey Alexandrovitch, honestly, I don't know what you mean," she said. "Make clear to me that you find—" "Allow me to finish. I love you, but I'm not speaking for myself. Those who are chiefly interested are your son and yourself. It's quite possible, I repeat, that my words may seem idle and ill-judged. Possibly they are a result of mistake on my part. In that case I beg your forgiveness, but you yourself must feel that there is some foundation for my remarks, and I earnestly urge you to reflect, and, if your heart inclines you, to confide in me." Alexey Alexandrovitch, without noticing the fact, had spoken a very different discourse from the one that he had prepared. "I've nothing to say," and she added in a sprightly tone, scarcely hiding a smile, "Da, it's truly time to go to bed." Alexey Alexandrovitch sighed, and, without speaking further, went to his room. When she reached the room, he was already in bed. His lips were sternly set, and he did not look at her. Anna got into bed, expecting that he would speak to her. She both feared it and desired it. But he said nothing. She waited long without moving, and then forgot all about him. The image of another filled her with emotion and with guilty joy. Suddenly she heard a slow and regular sound of snoring. Alexey Alexandrovitch at first was startled himself, and stopped. But at the end of a second the snoring began again with monotonous regularity. Too late, thought she with a smile. She remained for a long time thus, motionless, with open eyes, and shining of which it seemed to her she herself could see.